It's January 1721 in Philadelphia, and the Colonial reader isn't looking for light entertainment. They need actionable intelligence. This is the American Weekly Mercury. This front page reveals an early American landscape defined by deep skepticism of foreign powers, constant maritime lawlessness, and severe economic peril. The readers of this paper had to simultaneously parse the macro-level statecraft of European monarchs and the micro-level reality of physical survival on the colonial frontier. Colonial media functioned as an active survival tool, drawing a direct line between international treaties signed in palaces and the physical safety of the Atlantic coastline. The first major security threat in this briefing focuses on the machinations of a European superpower, Spain. The editor immediately presents a diplomatic paradox. Spain had just recently begged for a cessation of arms and was obliged to sign the Quadruple Alliance Peace Treaty. Yet, despite this official peace treaty, the paper reports a massive, ongoing military buildup over the summer. The dispatch logs the physical evidence, completing their troops, strengthening their fortresses, and building new ships. The Spanish crown provides an official cover story for this armada. They claim these extensive preparations are designed for a campaign against the Emperor of Morocco. This alibi leverages a very real secondary threat to justify the buildup: Moorish pirates operating off the African coast, frequently taking Christian captives into slavery. The colonial editor refuses to take this state narrative at face value. The text explicitly questions the true target of the armada, stating starkly that they cannot readily conceive how these aggressive maneuvers indicate peace. The newspaper frames this deceit as standard operating procedure. It warns readers of the broadly mysterious conduct typical of European powers maneuvering for dominance. By printing this analysis, the Mercury provided the framework for colonists to identify geopolitical smokescreens, acknowledging that a European arms buildup across the ocean posed a direct threat to local security. The scope of the paper then tightens, moving from European capitals to immediate regional threats right off the Capes of Virginia. Here, a Spanish brigantine privateer is operating. The dispatch tracks this privateer actively harassing English merchant ships, successfully capturing multiple vessels and their valuable cargo. The report includes a dose of sharp editorial snark, noting that many of the missing English ships weren't lost in battle, but were wrecked due to the captors' ignorance in navigation after they took the wheel. The story takes a jurisdictional twist when the captured ships are hauled down into Florida, brought before the governor at the formidable Spanish stronghold of St. Augustine. The resulting intelligence provides a critical update. The so-called privateer was actually a fraud operating under forged documents. The St. Augustine governor delivers swift, lethal frontier justice. The fraudulent captain is immediately imprisoned and condemned to death. Because the raid was deemed illegal under Spanish law, the stolen English ships and cargo are released and successfully returned to their rightful owners. In an era where a simple message to Madrid or London took months to cross the ocean, local colonial governors had to aggressively police this kind of counterfeit warfare. Executing a rogue captain on the spot was a practical mechanism for preventing full-scale imperial war. The briefing then zeroes in on a highly specific maritime encounter involving Captain Seymour, commanding a vessel out of New York. The paper meticulously catalogs the ship's defensive capabilities. Seymour's vessel is outfitted with 4 carriage guns, 4 swivel guns, and small arbs, matching the attacking Spanish force with an equal number of men. Given the parity in firepower and numbers, the outcome is shocking. The English crew declines to fight entirely and surrenders without firing a single shot. Why would a well-armed, capable crew choose submission over defense? This flowchart illustrates the answer, which lies in the systemic difference in compensation between serving in the King's Navy and working on a private merchant vessel. If a sailor is injured in royal service, the Crown provides continued financial support. On a private merchant ship, that compensation completely vanishes. The newspaper defines the concept dictating this behavior: smart money. It functions as hazard pay for combat injuries. The economic calculus is brutal. A maimed merchant sailor receives no pension and faces a life of absolute misery. From a purely financial standpoint, risking life and limb to protect someone else's cargo is an irrational choice. The Mercury takes an explicit activist editorial stance on this issue. It directly advocates for merchants to provide a gratuity, a guaranteed provision for any sailor maimed while defending the ship. This report demonstrates that survival on the maritime frontier relied on cold economic logic, reframing a perceived failure of courage as a rational response to labor conditions. The briefing concludes with a final local dispatch, detailing a disastrous harbor departure right off the coast. It captures the brutal environmental reality of the Atlantic. During heavy seas, a rescue boat striving to catch a tow rope is violently smashed against a larger vessel, instantly drowning 3 men. The tragedy compounds moments later when a second rescue boat, sent to help the first, is overwhelmed by the chop and capsizes. The dispatch records a grim scene of survival. 2 men cling to an overturned keel for 2 hours before rescue. The ship survives, limping back to Virginia 15 days later, navigating using only the stump of a broken mast. Looking back over the breadth of this single document reveals the sheer volume of data an 18th century colonist had to process. In just a few columns of ink, the paper challenged the foreign policy of a superpower, tracked the lethal consequences of counterfeit warfare, and advocated for systemic maritime labor reform. To read the news in 1721 was an act of constant risk assessment. It required building a precise mental model of a perilous world, one where the American colonies were caught in a permanent vice between grand imperial ambitions and a completely unforgiving ocean.
The Daily Dispatch, history in print.